MotoGP bikes are faster than F1 cars in all the ways that really matter. But if you're going to look at lap times in particular, F1 cars absolutely dominate MotoGP. Both F1 and MotoGP have raced at the Red Bull Ring, and they've also raced at Mugello. On the same circuit, especially looking at Mugello, the difference is 29 seconds faster for an F1 car. If you're looking just purely at lap time, F1 wins. I'm Tim from Ride Along Trackside. But it's not lap time that really matters if you're thinking about speed. We're going to look at three things to explain this as to why it's so much more interesting. One, what does the lap time comparison actually get wrong? Two is on braking demand. How physical is that and what's the impact to both F1 and MotoGP bikes? And then three, Red Bull actually put two of their MotoGP riders in an F1 car and they can give you the real comparison. Firstly, thinking about lap time, you might think about top speed. And top speed is maybe surprising here. Qatar 2024, Jorge Martin hit 366 kilometers an hour on the straight. F1 peaks between 345 to around 360. So in a straight line, MotoGP is faster. The big difference here is the G-forces. And what I mean by that is the G-force that comes laterally via an F1 car and on a MotoGP bike. F1 cars generate 5G of lateral G-force. MotoGP bikes generate 2G of lateral G-force. And that's where downforce plays such a central factor in the F1 car being able to beat MotoGP bikes at lap times. They can push so much harder through the corners where a MotoGP bike simply can't do that. In the F1 car, you have the halo now, you've got the monocoque, you're strapped in. You've also got four wheels keeping you on the ground, stuck with those grippy tires, allowing you to push harder through the corners. Whereas on the MotoGP bike, it's just you and your machine cornering, throwing your legs off the side, trying to stop in time to get around corners. It's just simply not the same. So the advantage is really around the corners, not in the straight line, because the bike's faster. Coming into corners, you can see the real difference when it comes to braking. Around the Red Bull Ring, an F1 car can stop 120 meters in 1.8 seconds. But a MotoGP bike going around the same corner at the Red Bull Ring needs 5.2 seconds and it takes them 250 meters to stop. The bikes are shorter and the cars are longer. They're much more narrow, whereas the cars are wider. They've only got 2 tires versus 4 tires. And under that maximum braking, there's so much forward pressure on the bike that the rear wheel wants to lift up. So coming into that maximum braking zone, physics is literally working against the MotoGP rider as the bike lurches forward, throwing up the back tire and pushing twice the body weight into one front tire, that one contact patch. And what that shows you is that the rider actually becomes part of the machine, if you will, coming around a corner. It's not just the mechanical part of the bike, but the rider is absorbing all of that pressure coming in to every corner. Whereas in an F1 car, each rider is harnessed in really as tightly as they can to prevent the effect of the G-forces throwing them out of the vehicle. And so they can push much harder. When they brake harder, they stop faster, their body's being thrown around, but it's being kept together. And what was so interesting is that in 2018, there was a test with Marquez and Dani Pedrosa. They actually drove an F1 car around the Red Bull Ring. And the feedback they delivered, along with the feedback from Mark Webber, who was teaching them on the day how to drive that car, was that the MotoGP riders wanted to brake earlier and they also started going down the gears earlier, much before a corner started. Webber's feedback was, especially for Marquez, he could start turning down the gears closer to the corner and that he could definitely push on the brakes later as he comes in. And that feedback from Mark Webber actually helped Marquez drop more than 6 seconds. The other significant part is that the riders have to lean past what would feel really normal for an average human when they're taking a corner. they're leaning past 45 degrees to get around a corner, whether it be left or right, which is part of the cornering maneuvers on MotoGP bikes. So it's clearly a different sport entirely and super fast. And it isn't just MotoGP riders that have driven on F1 cars. Lewis Hamilton famously tried out one of the Yamaha bikes and did surprisingly well on it. But the feedback is really about how different the experience is from being inside the car to being exposed on a bike. You need to brake earlier. You need to turn the bike and lean it into a corner. And there's nothing surrounding you. They're both fast sports, but really if someone who's a big F1 fan and doesn't understand MotoGP says that F1 is faster than MotoGP and they're comparing on lap times, you know you've got an argument to say that maybe they're not right. And I also love F1 and I love the speed that they bring in the cornering. But the real difference with MotoGP is that the rider is part of the machine. They're performing part of the braking. They're leaning the bike 45 to almost 60 degrees around a corner. That's where all this extra speed is either won or lost in the race. And we are seeing actually some crossover in terms of all of the aero bits and pieces from F1 cars seem like they're coming to MotoGP, which I'll link to in this video. Anyway, I'd be interested to hear which one you'd prefer to try, an F1 car or a MotoGP bike. Let me know in the comments and we'll be posting videos every week.